Good morning, everyone. We will be discussing another story about Gulliver's Travel. So, this story is about Limal Gulliver, a ship surgeon who traveled strange land with very different societies. First, visit Lilliput, a land of tiny people who fight over trivial issues. Then he find himself in Brodignags, where giants treat him like a small pet. In Laputan, he meets people obsessed with science but lacking of common sense. And then finally, he arrives in the land of UMMs, wise horses who live peacefully unlike human like yahoos. So each places teaches Gulliver a new perspective of human behavior, society, and power, making readers question their own world. So Gulliver's Travel is a kind of satirical adventure. It is the story that combines exciting journey or adventure with satire, using humor or exaggerations to point out problem or foolishness in society, people, or ideas. So, for the main character in Gulliver's Travel by Jonathan Smith are Lemuel Gulliver, the protagonist and the narrator of the story. He is a surgeon and ship captain who travels to various fantastical lands. The Lilliputians, tiny people who inhabit the island of Lilliput, they are known for their political intrigue and their strict rules. The Brodignagians, a giant who inhabit the island of Brodignags. They're gently and wise, but they're also astonished by Gulliver's small size and complexities of human society. The UIMs, irrational horses who inhabits the island of UIMs. They are highly intelligent and virtuous. They are viewed human as irrational and corrupt. The Yahoo, savage bestial creature, who also inhabit the island of UIMs. They are the counterparts of UIMs presenting the negative aspect of humanity. For the setting of the story, Lilliput, the kingdom of tiny people, only 6 inches tall, where political pettiness and rivalry are common. Bredignag, a land of giants who live simple moral lives and are shocked by the European values. Laputan and Balberbarbi, floating island, which is the Laputan, full of thinker focus on abstract ideas, and the land below is what we call the Balbinarbi, where people attempt to odd experiment that mostly fail. Glove the Brave, Lagnag in Japan, a small island with unique societies. Glove the Brave has magicians, Lagnag has immortals, and Japan serves as a place where Gulliver's briefly visit on his way home. UIMs, a society led by wise, rational horses, UIMs and inhabited with savage, human-like creatures, what we call yahoos, where Gulliver feels both admiration and rejection.
So Gulliver's traveled the world on several voyages aboard a ship. There was a curious surgeon named Lemuel Gulliver. He loved to sail and explore, so he went to many exciting voyages that lead him to some very strange places. So the rising action of the story is Gulliver's visit Lilliput, where people were 6 inches tall. Gulliver's first adventure took him to the tiny island of Lilliput, where everyone was only 6 inches tall after a storm wrecked his ship. Gulliver washed ashore and was captured by the little people who were scared of him at first. They tied him up to keep him safe. Once he proved he would not hurt them, they let him go. The Emperor of Lilliput asked Gulliver to help in a war against their enemy, Blefuscu. Gulliver used his size to capture Blefuscu's navy and became a hero. But things turned bad when he accidentally put out a fire in the emperor's palace by urinating on it. He was charged with treason and had to escape to Blefuscu, where he found a boat to return home. Next, Gulliver visits Brobdingnag, a land populated by giants. So Gulliver didn't stay home for long. He set off again and ended up in a Brobdingnag, a land of giants. Here, he was the tiny one and the giant people were very curious about him. A farmer caught him and showed him off to crowds of people. Later, the queen saw Gulliver and wanted to keep him. He lived in the royal court for 2 years, but he had to be careful because the giants could easily hurt him. The king listened to Gulliver's stories about England, but he was shocked by how cruel humans could be. Eventually, Gulliver's box was carried away by a giant bird and he was rescued by an English ship again. Then, Gulliver goes to Laputan, an island full of mathematicians. So after returning home, Gulliver went on another voyage. This time, pirates took his ship and he ended up on a floating island called Laputa. The people there were very smart but so focused on their math and science that they ignored everything else around them. Bored with them, Gulliver traveled down to the land below called Balnearbarbe. There he saw strange scientists trying to do silly experiments. For example, one scientist tried to get sunlight from cucumbers. Gulliver realized that just showing things wasn't enough if it didn't make sense in a real world. Then, Gulliver moves to the Glabdobrev, Lognag, and Japan. So Gulliver traveled to Glabdobrev where a magician could bring back the dead. Gulliver talked to a famous people from history, learning from their experiences. Next, he went to Lugnag where he met the Shadbrogs, people who never died but kept getting older and older. There, they were sad and miserable, which taught Gulliver that living forever might not be a good thing. He also made a short stop in Japan where he was treated kindly and allowed to live without promises that he went against his beliefs. Then we have the climax. So Gulliver's crew leaves him in the Humes and Yahoos. The most amazing part of Gulliver's adventure happened when he was left on an island of intelligent horses called the Humes. These horses live by reason and kindness, while the other creatures there called Yahoos were messy and rude. So the following action is Gulliver's wants to stay at in Humes, but he is sent away. So Gulliver loves the Humes and wanted to stay with them because they were so wise and good, but the Humes thought Gulliver was another Yahoo because he looked like them. They decided he could not live with them, so he had to leave, which broke his heart. So the resolution is Gulliver returns to England but despises Yahoo society. Finally, Gulliver went back to England, but he felt very different. The people there some pity and rude compared to the kind Humes. He was so disappointed that he didn't want to be around humans anymore. Instead, he preferred to be with the horses. Though through his amazing adventures, Gulliver learned many lessons about human nature and society. He saw the good and bad sides of people, which made him think deeply about how people behave and what really matters in life. So, the theme of the story is about abuse of power and cerebral versus real world. So the abuse of power there is Gulliver meets many kings and leaders from very small to very big, and they all misuse their power in some way. Some leaders make their people do embarrassing things to show they are in charge. For example, the king of Lugnag makes people lick the floor. The king of Lilliput is not very smart, short, starts silly wars. Even the Humes who Gulliver's admirers treat the Yahoos who are not as smart with disrespect. So the cerebral versus real world. So the cultures Gulliver visits either focus too much on practical things or think too much about ideas that make the life hard. For example, the Laputans are very good at science and math, but they can't even make decent clothes. Their knowledge makes them very anxious. The humans think only about reason, which means they miss out on important feelings like love and make life special.
For the themes, society versus individual. So the conflicts between societies and individual, where society has rules to make things work, but individual are unique and sometimes want to do things their own way. In Gulliver's Travel, Gulliver is always in the situation where the rule of society clash with his own way of doing. And Lilliputians have silly rules, he feels are pointless, and the UIMs are so logical that they don't allow for anyone to be different. So the story makes you think about how important rules are, but also how important it is for people to be themselves. It's tricky to find that balance between doing what's good for anyone and being true to yourself. Second is the perspective. In Gulliver's Travels exposes him to a variety of perspective and culture. He learns to see the world through the eyes of the Lilliputians, the Brodagnigians, and the Wayams and the Yahos, gaining a broader understanding of human nature and the complexities of different societies. Gulliver's own perspective shifts throughout the story. He initially views himself as the rational and civilized individual, but his experience with the various societies lead him to question his own belief and values. He becomes increasingly delusional with humanities and ultimately embraces the Wayam's views of human as inherently flawed. That's all for this discussions and thank you for listening.